Hi friends, welcome to another tutorial on GRE, Generic Routing Encapsulation, a protocol used for the encapsulation of the traffic. So on my screen, as you can see, I have a simple topology, and the agenda of this video is to demonstrate how you can configure a GRE tunnel between the Fortigate firewall and the SRX, Juniper SRX firewall, and the configuration remains the same for the Juno devices like SRX, EX, MX with a little changes to the configuration. Let's start with the topology. So on the left hand side, we have the FortiGate firewall, and on the port 1, we have the private IP configured 192.168.0.108. On the internal port, which is port 2, we have the IP address public 14.140.40.108. This is a network. And on the other hand, we have a SRX firewall, which is probably running 19 version. I'll show you the version details as well. So on the gig 000, we have the private IP 192.168.0.106. Okay. And then the network which will try to access the other ends remote network would be 33.33.33.33/32. This is a test network, test IP that we have taken to demonstrate the working of GRE tunnel. And for simplicity, we have taken both the interfaces GE000 and loopback in the same zone on trust, so that it'll be easy for us to tune the security policy. And just consider this as a normal network. So the GRE tunnel, the GRE tunnels are numbered. By numbered, I mean the GRE tunnels will have the IP address, as you can see on both the devices. Well, this is not a mandatory step to have an IP address on the GRE tunnel, but there are certain scenarios where you would need the IP addresses on the GRE tunnels. For example, when you're trying to do some NATing, or when you're trying to run some routing protocol like OSPF, so that you can form adjacencies between the two tunnel IPs and between the two interfaces. So the virtual GRE tunnel will be between the GRE, as you have mentioned here. These are the virtual tunnel endpoints. And the actual tunnel exit point would be port 1 from the Fortigate firewall and gig 000 from the SRX end. And the intention is to access the network 14.14.140.40.108 from the 33.33.33 network via a GRE tunnel. This will only provide the encapsulation with the traffic initiated from this network before it exits out of the firewall will be encapsulated and then sent to the other end. The other end will decapsulate it and then send the actual traffic to the respective IP. So I guess I already have the IP addresses configured on the interfaces, and that's all. I mean, I can start the configuration. So let's try to jump into the configuration of Fortigate first. By the way, this is my Fortigate firewall and this is my Juniper SRX. FortiGate firewall is running on 700 firmware. So to configure the GRE tunnel on the FortiGate firewall, you will have to have the CLI access. There is no feature available on the GUI to configure the GRE tunnel directly. We can refer to the KB or the documentation that I've created for the GRE tunnel between FortiGate and the Juniper SRX firewall. I'll share the link in the description for you to have a look. The interface will be port 1, which is the physical interface exit point for the GRE tunnel. And then we'll try to mention the remote gateway. The remote gateway is going to be the remote ends GRE endpoint 192.168.0.106, and the local will be 192.168.0.108. These are the endpoints for the GRE tunnel. All right, so I'll show you the other configuration as well. So you can see here, I already have the port 1 configured with the IP 192.168.0.108, and port 2 is having the IP address 14.140.40.108. So now that we have the GRE tunnel configured, we should see the same on the GUI. So now you can see that the GRE tunnel is showing up under the tunnel interface. Let's try to get into this. So this is unnumbered as of now. So I'll try to put the IP address there, which is going to be 2.2.2.2. And on the FortiGate firewall, it will not allow you to change the subnet. It is going to be /32. I'll show you the difference on the other end, which is the SRX device, Juniper device, which will allow you to configure any subnet. So here on the FortiGate firewall, you will only be able to select it as /32. This is the other end's IP and subnet mask. So this will create a static route pointing to the GRE tunnel for this remote IP. I'll show you the routing table as well once we are done with this configuration. So now that we have the numbered GRE tunnel here, the configuration is complete. Now we can configure the policy. Let's try to create a allow policy. Let's select the source interface as port 2 because this is the subnet that will try to access from the remote end to and fro. Outgoing interface is going to be the GRE tunnel that we just created. Let the source be 14.140.40.0 and destination be all. Services be all. Or we can try to have all ICMP there. No need of NAT. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to clone this in reverse direction. Okay, so the destination is going to be 14.140.40.0. Source is going to be all from the remote ends, which is the Juniper SRX device. Okay, so now the policy is also configured. Let's try to enable this. So now that we have the policy in place, the next thing will be the route. So let's try to get into the network, static route, create a static route. The remote IP is going to be 33.33.33.33 on the FortiGate firewall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 33.33.33.33 pointing to the GRE tunnel. As you can see, the routing table. So in the routing table, you can see the route that we just added, and you will see a notification as well stating 2.2.1 is not reachable. This is because the FortiGate by default takes the IP address as /32 on the GRE tunnel. I tried changing this, but then it seems like this is not allowed on the Fortigate firewall, especially on 7.0 version. So because of this, the Fortigate firewall explicitly requires a route towards the remote IP 2.2.2.1. And once it is reachable, you will not see that error. By the way, once we complete the configuration, we should automatically see the route for 2.2.2.1 via the GRE tunnel. So don't worry about the warning that you see here. Make sure this route is enabled. So right now we have all the configuration on the FortiGate firewall. Let me just quickly show you on the CLI as well. You can see here, there is a route active for the remote IP 33.33.33.33 via the GRE tunnel that we just configured. And there is another route, as you can see here, 2.2.2.0/30t, which is our remote ends IP on the GRE tunnel 2221/30t. So by default, FortiGate will create a static route pointing to the GRE tunnel. So you don't really have to configure this manually. So the two routes, this is the route that gets added automatically. This is the route that you will have to configure manually. So now that we have all the configuration in place on the FortiGate firewall, let's try to jump to the SRX, Juniper SRX device. This is our Juniper device, Juniper SRX firewall with the firmware 19.4R3.11. So you can see here this particular interface is already having the IP address 192.168.0.106 on gig 000. And let's try to check the loopback interface as well. So you can see loopback is already configured 33, 33, 33, 33. So you can see here that all the interfaces that we will be using for the GRE configuration is already in the untrust zone. And I believe I already have a policy to allow all the traffic. So you can see here, this is the policy that permits everything, which is not recommended in the production environment. You can provide granularity to the policy to avoid any sort of unwanted access. But then this is just for the demonstration purpose. This is the GRE tunnel interface, which will be available by default. So we'll have to configure the unit there. Let's try to configure the GRE tunnel interface first, similar to the Fortigate firewall. Configuration is mentioned here. So what we can do is we can try to copy this to avoid delay. You can see here, source is 106, destination is 108 as per our topology. And then we'll try to configure the IP address on the interface. As you can see here, I've given /30 here, but the Fortigate was not able to take that /30. So now that we have the tunnel configured with the source GRE destination, and the tunnel is numbered as well, let's move on to the next section. Okay, we'll have to assign this to the zone. We'll try to assign it to the same zone. So I'm going to add it to the untrust zone. Okay, this is already added. I guess I just copy pasted it. Okay. Now that the interface is already assigned to the untrust zone, so let's try to move on to the next section. Okay, so now we have the IP addresses configured on the GRE tunnel. Interface is configured properly, assigned to the zone, policy in place. The next thing on the SRX would be to define the route for the remote subnet, which is 14.140.4108. I'll quickly show you the diagram. You can see here 14.140.4108 from the SRX end. So this is the configuration that is going to be pushed. Let's check if we have any missing configuration. Okay, this is already configured. Host inbound traffic for protocol and system services already allowed. Let's try to commit this. Let's wait for the commit to complete. It is completed. Okay, now let's try to check the status of the GRE tunnel. Okay, on the Fortigate firewall, we can see the tunnel configuration. Let's try to ping the remote IP, which is 33.33.33.33. You can see here, I'm able to ping from the 14.140.4108. Let's try to change. Okay. Let's try to ping the tunnel interface IP. Tunnel IP is 2.2.2.1 on the SRX GRE tunnel interface. You can see here, I'm able to ping that as well. Now let's move on to SRX device. Let's try to keep the source as and then try to ping, which is configured on port 2 on the Fortigate firewall. You can see here, I'm able to ping that. Let's try to ping the GRE Tunnel IP as well. You can see I'm able to ping that as well. Let's try to change the source. This is the GRE Tunnel IP, and we'll try to ping. You can see I'm able to ping that as well. Let's try to ping this IP from the tunnel IP. Okay, that is also pingable. Let's try to check the session detail. You can see here, this is the session information. You can see here, this is the session information, the traffic through the GRE tunnel. And on the SRX, you will see a GRE session already there. You can see here the session on the SRX firewall. And one more thing, what you will see is the actual GRE session, which will be a static session. You can see here, this is the static GRE session. All right, guys, that's all in this video. I guess I've covered everything. And this configuration was basically for the GRE tunnel, which is numbered, which is having the IP address on it, so that you can run the routing protocol or do the netting based on your scenario. And in the documentation, I've mentioned everything about the steps, about the result that you will see. All right, guys, see you in the next video. And please do subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and stay tuned for more updates. Thank you.